Now I'm very excited to welcome back, I should say, Mr. Joe Gibbs from Sharp Football Analysis. You can follow Joe on X at NFL Ref Stats One. Joe, thanks, my man, for coming back on the show. It's been a whirlwind of a week one. Hope you're doing well this week. Could you tell us a little bit about how your week one went and how you're doing?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Just glad to have football back. Week one, not too bad. I didn't have a strong opinion on a lot of games. I'm just happy to have football back and then just observe the teams, observe the referees, and just try and get an idea of the lay of the land more than anything else. And so took some notes. Week one and then into week two this week, to me, are the two toughest weeks of the year. Week one, you kind of get a snapshot of what you see from the teams, but then you overreact week two from week one, and it's very confusing. So I really just use that more as a 2-week stretch to sit back, take notes, and just lay the foundation for the season ahead. Really, that's the way I approach it.
That's great. I mean, everyone hates the Dolphins. You know, the Dolphins are the worst team in the league, according to everybody. The reactions are fun to watch. And you know what? I've doing this all these years. I know I'm definitely not betting against some of these or for these reactions. I think there's some real and there's not, but we have to remember these teams are embarrassed that lost bad, and these teams are a little fat and happy that won really well. So those are like the ways that I like to look at it, and I think others do too. But could you just remind our listeners or tell our new listeners kind of what you do? That's actually kind of a specialty compared to the rest of us handicappers.
Yeah, I look at the officiating impact on the games and have a great database of every referee, pretty much from every angle. I break it down into quadrants and just 10-yard breakdown of every referee of how they call the game, if they favor the home team, the road team, overs, unders, and just apply that to each game on a week-by-week basis and how it affects each team, whether positively or negatively. And it's not the be-all, end-all, and nothing is, but it certainly provides some insight into how the game's going to be called. The easiest example I can give you is if a refereeing crew really focuses on offensive holding, and you have a team in a game, Team A struggles with offensive holding and Team B doesn't, well, straight off the bat, then that obviously is an advantage for the team that doesn't have the issues with that penalty. So that's an easy example to give, but that kind of gives a glimpse into how I approach it.
It's a great example, and it's so unique to this landscape. And it's something that you enjoy doing, and I enjoy you doing it because I really believe that they affect some of these lines, and they have some predispositions. You know, I think that without even them necessarily knowing it, like you can tell them one of their records for over-unders, and they'd be like, what? I think that's really interesting. A lot of them probably don't like to be criticized. A lot of these guys are doctors, lawyers, and stuff like that don't want to hear it. But I think it's important that, we approach this level of handicapping in a sport that is so tight as it is. I think the flags mean a lot more in the NFL than they do in college because it's just so much more tighter and so much is decided.
Oh, absolutely. The margins are so thin between a win and a loss, and one flag, especially late in the game. I mean, it can completely turn the game based on that call, or just as importantly, a no call. And so, yeah, it really does have a huge impact on the game. And, the NFL is now in bed with all the betting companies, and that just adds a whole other layer of controversy to it. And so when you get into bed with all these companies and every other ad is, go and bet at DraftKings or whatever, you're just asking for trouble. And, the NFL probably doesn't appreciate some of my content. I don't think that it probably don't even know who I am, but I know that some of the.
I think they might know who you are. They probably have you on a shit list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I work for CBS. I did some stuff for them the last couple of years, but no more, and they were a little uneasy with the content. Let's just put it that way. And you got to think about it. CBS is a partner with the league, and every other commercial on CBS is go and bet the games, and then you can't really have someone like me on one of their platforms breaking down the game from an officiating perspective. It just doesn't look good. And so
it sure doesn't. And that's what I say. I think the networks at least subconsciously influence a lot of what's going on. You've seen it with stars, with Brady and Mahomes for sure over the past few years, that, they tend to get a lot more love in. And I almost feel like it's a subconscious thing that, they want their games to be better. And maybe sometimes even, to keep people engaged to watch commercials in the NFL. Maybe they also feel that the networks will lose a lot of money if there's blowouts.
Absolutely. I mean, studies have shown this. I mean, think about it. If you're the NFL, your product is a football game, and there's 284 games a year roughly. So each game's an individual product. You want to market that product to its maximum potential. And if it's 40-0, well, that product loses a lot of value in the last hour and a half of the game. But if you can have a referee keep that by calling certain penalties close and more people tuned in, which equals higher ratings, which means more advertising dollars. Yeah, it's strictly a business. That's all it is. And the referees are essentially the guys out there who are doing the NFL's bidding.
It's so funny. And what sucks is that you get these stats, you notice stuff, and then you feel like a conspiracy theorist, and but it also makes you more paranoid as a person, because, the lightning things that's been going on in college and football. You put my tinfoil hat on. Should I get struck by lightning because I have a metal hat? It's just the situation is like, who's this benefit? I mean, I've been going to games since I was born. I never seen this lightning strike anybody, and there's never lightning stops. It's just, there's so much weird stuff going on, and it drives me nuts. And I hate the fact that it happens, because it brings all this ambiguity to it. And it's so funny. I think that people are so wrong about the Vegas side, thinking Vegas called as the dumbest thing in the world. But I think there are other factors that you and I like to try to sniff out and just try to make a rhyme or reason about things that we see. And that's what's great about what you do. How long have you compiled these stats? And I suppose, like, what made you get started?
It'd be about 10 years now that I've been compiling the stats, but I didn't really do anything with them. I used them for my own personal use for many years. It wasn't until the Supreme Court overturned the ban on sports betting, I think 2018. So you can even look on my Twitter account. It started in August of 2019. Once the Supreme Court made that decision, I realized, having viewed stuff in England and Australia, which is where I'm originally from, Australia, with legalized sports betting there, that the officiating was a constant source of frustration or innuendo, whatever you want to call it. And I knew that would happen here. Previously, right, gambling was only legal in Vegas. I mean, you can do it offshore and stuff, but now it's in 33, 34 states. And I always use this example. If the Bengals are on Sunday night and some guy in Dayton, Ohio, 20 years ago, he's just angry that the Bengals lost. Well, now that guy in Dayton, Ohio has put his paycheck on the Bengals and they lost, and you add in social media, and it makes the perfect storm for all this stuff to just escalate. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing it every week with the officiating.
Absolutely. And it's driving you nuts. And it's funny, when you saw the pass bug get overturned, it probably made you kind of like, oh my God, wait till this stuff gets brought up, and wait. I have the data. Well, there you have it. That's great. Let's talk about week one. Which officiating crew do you think impacted which game maybe the most? And it could be adversely, however you want to say it.
There was two games that stood out to me. One was the Broncos-Titans. The Broncos got a very beneficial game called in their favor from Alex Kemp. Now, the Broncos probably would have won anyway, but look, it was close. And I know they were the most picked team in the Circus Survivor last week. And, Kemp's crew certainly assisted them in that victory. Let's put it that way. You look at the penalty count, it was lopsided, and they got some timely penalties. But the one I think most people saw was the primetime game, Monday Night Football, with the Bears and the Vikings, with Alan Eck on that game. And a lot of Chicago fans were not happy with the way that was officiated. There was an offensive holding call that didn't look to be, and also a pass interference call that went against the Bears. And those were very big penalties in the overall scheme of the game.
I'm glad you said that, because not all penalty is equal. This pass interference, when the guy fell down, was a third down. So, and it was third and a long too. So that possibly changes the decision, and it's a massive impact. So let's talk EPA. I know you collect, lots of data, but I would wonder if there's somewhere where it would show the EPA of each team affected by officiating, because I think that from a sports betting, or even maybe some of the advanced media members that understand EPA and things, how it really affects the game.
Yeah, I have all that stuff like penalty, EPA, offensive, defensive, and then on every single down. I can just tell you right now off the top of my head that the Kansas City Chiefs have the worst negative offensive EPA after 1 week of the season. It's a small sample size, but that's just to give you an example. So I do have all that stuff for every
So
team.
the Chiefs that benefited before were the ones that didn't this year so far.
So far, the Chiefs have not benefited. They have a negative. It's like minus 3.97. You got to put that in context, but that's what it was, like minus 3.97 offensive penalty EPA, which is 32nd in the league, the worst in the league after 1 week.
Wow, that's great. And so you probably have systems that quantify EPA based upon some of these flags.
Yeah, you can break it down for every first, second, third, fourth down with every referee, so you can look at it. And so it's very boring, I'll be honest with you. And I don't put this stuff on Twitter because some guys look at this, they're like, oh, okay, whatever. Twitter is more for controversy and just a quick hit, da-da-da-da. But the teams, and I do talk to some of the teams about this, and it's more for their benefit than consuming on social media, where it doesn't get any traction. But the teams, it's extremely useful information when you can pinpoint on third down, this is where your advantage is with this referee, whether it's on the offensive, defensive side of the ball. They may be more likely to call a penalty, say, in the first and second quarter, but on that same penalty or that same play in the fourth quarter, their percentages plummet. And so you need to know this stuff going in with certain crews.
I mean, that's amazing. It must be difficult to judge every single flag per game. That must be very time consuming, unless some of it's automated.
Well, yes, it is automated. In large degree, it's automated. But then you've still got to go through it all, and then it's hard. It's a lot of work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. In Las Vegas, Chris was wondering what does it mean, the worst mean with KC? They got screwed most by the rest, or they screwed themselves? I almost think it means screwed the most by the refs, right?
Well, they got the most off. They compiled the most
negative expected,
the most negative expectation via penalties, and they had 3 false starts and 3 offensive holdings last week off the top of my head, and I think they had a delay a game or something like that. So when you combine all that into the game, in the situation they were in on that particular play, that's, again, it's a lot of explaining to do, but that's the gist of it.
I think you're on the right track. I think it is their fault, except for you still have to count the EPAs on a non-existent pass interference, which is going to adversely affect them. But that would, I guess, not be their fault if the ref screwed up, right? But it still goes against the other team. And obviously, I would make the argument that they benefited last year mostly from that, and that's what's interesting. It's like there is absolutely teams that commit more penalties, and they deserve to be scrutinized for it. But there's also teams that are more fortunate because of it as well.
There's that, and then to your point earlier, certain teams get calls like Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. They're going to get that because that benefits the league to have those guys' faces on TV in big games, in close games, whereas the Carolina Panthers probably just don't get it. It's probably a subconscious thing, but that's the way the world works. But actually, as far as penalties go, and I've spoke to teams about this, more so on the defensive side of things, committing penalties is actually a smart thing. There's a strategic way to do it, to optimize it. And, you use the Overton window, the level of acceptability. You really want to commit penalties. A defensive holding penalty on first down on a 1st and 10 at the opponent's 23-yard line, that's a fantastic penalty in my book, because you've got that penalty out of the way on a nothing play. It's only 5 yards, but the referee knows that they can only throw so many flags. They've already thrown one. So now on 3rd and 6, you may hold. They're like, well, I threw one 2 plays. I don't want to throw another one. You know what I mean? So
Yes, the conscious game, and sometimes the crew will just stick right on it and just keep throwing it, and they have, but they're nervous. They're like, "Oh my
But
god, I look like an
They
idiot."
can't because the league doesn't want that. The league tells them
And,
to.
and so the teams keep doing it, and I think some of the Baltimore Ravens defenses that were amazing just kept doing it too. In
Yeah,
the past,
Baltimore's really good at it. The old Seahawks with the Legion of Boom, though, every play they held. Well, on average last year, each team was called for 2.4 defensive penalties per game. That's on average. So the referee's going to call a team 2.4 times a game. They're going to throw a flag on your defense. Well, you may be on the field for 65 plays. So that means there's 62 and a half plays you're not getting called. So you might as well hold on every play because they can't throw 62 flags.
Yeah, and that's true. Now it has to be the fact that you're in position to benefit afterwards, because if it could change the game, and that's why another great question from Chris: the rating is a combination of called penalties and timing, or is it just called penalties?
Down and distance, called penalties, the time of the game. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Yeah, a lot.
Into EPA, right? Into EPA, because a third down is different in the fourth quarter at the end of the game when the time score. Yeah, that's interesting. And is there an accounting factor included on penalties not called? That's tough.
That's kind of my holy grail right now, is to create a database for that. But it goes back to the penalty's not called. Well, what do you consider a penalty that was not called? So you and me could disagree on that. Tonight you'll see it tonight in the Commanders-Packers game that there'll be a no call on something, and half of Twitter will say it was a penalty, and the other half won't. So the problem with the database of the no calls, which I think would be an awesome concept, you have to determine which ones are no calls that should have been, and then
you're playing God. You're playing God, and it has to be pretty. Well, I mean, we know the game. We're going to know when they screwed up. Not all Twitter will. As a matter of fact, most Twitter wouldn't. But I think that you would definitely know. And the problem is you're compiling this, and it's hard to sell that. And that's why, people write articles about officiating. They don't talk about like when Buffalo made it to the first down line clearly, but the one ref spotted it back, one ref spotted it there, and then they went with the guy that spotted it back, stuff like that. How do you quantify that? It's just like the eye test does it, but and I think that's why also people are upset. I think there's limitations on the data, but man, if you get that holy grail done, I'm really interested in learning more.
If I get that done, then Elon Musk will be mowing my lawn if I can.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Or at least Roger Goodell will send somebody to mow your lawn, and then probably influence.
Yeah, that'd be a money maker.
Sure would. And it's time consuming for sure. How much of a sample size do you need on these officiating crews before you start making educated determinations?
Ideally, the more the better. Right now, everything I do starts essentially between 2016 and 2018, because a lot of new referees came in the 2018 season. And so that's just a good place to start. Obviously, you had Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen all came in that season as well. So a lot of the stuff's from 2018 to now, but I do go back to 2016. You want to have 50, 60 games ideally to get a really good idea of what they're about. Like there's a new referee this season that's in the league, Alex Moore. He did his first game last week, the Jaguars Panthers. You can't do anything. It's one game. So it's going to take at least this entire season to start getting an idea of what his focus is.
Okay, let's just ask you an easy, one, and you have all kinds of different data for certain types of situation, home dogs, away dogs, and stuff. Which refs are more home refs and which refs are more away refs?
Okay, so the first question, home referees, there's a handful of them. John Hussey's the best home field referee. I've written this down here. So home teams with Hussey, this is going back to 2016, 90, 53, and 5 against the spread. That's the best of any referee over that time. Other really good home field.
Did you say 90 and 53?
90, 53, and 5 against the spread with John Hussey. And he is on, off the top of my head, he's on the Rams at the Titans this weekend, just for your information.
Ooh, tough to bet the Rams on that one. So what's the next one?
The couple of other guys who are very good. Carl Sheff is a solid home field referee. Not so much against the spread, but straight up. home teams have like a 61%, I think it is, winning percentage with him since 2016. Brad Allen's a good home field referee. And then that fellow that I mentioned previously, although it didn't pan out that way Monday night, is Alan Eck. He is in his third year, so he's got 2 years under his belt. And home teams with him up to Monday night are, let me see here, I've written it down, 24-9 straight up and 20-13 against the spread, 62%.
And that was better last week. It's so funny. You're right. The sample size is still a little small, but yeah, that was crazy what he did to the Bears.
The thing with him, the thing with Alan Eck was he, prior to becoming a head referee himself, he was part of the John Hussey crew. That's the fellow I just mentioned. So he's kind of continued what Hussey has done. So I sort of put some stock in that record. I think maybe it is legit, even though, like you said, it's only a 2-year sample size. But he was with John Hussey prior to being a head referee himself.
Great. Let's go to the away ones. And I know Rolstad's one of them.
Yeah, Rolstad's terrible. Home. This is
he loves being the enemy in the WWE.
He's actually not the worst. He's worse when I break it down into certain categories. Who we got here? Lane Clark, who has been in the league since 2019. Home teams are 32, 47, and 2 against the spread in his career.
Whoa, Lane Clark.
And
I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, and then Scott Novak, who's on the Steelers game this week, home teams with him. I wrote it down here. I can't find it, but they're not good. They're 40% against the spread, although the Steelers are undefeated at home with Scott Novak. So they're one team that's actually been able to buck that trend. And then as far as Craig Rolstad, this is an amazing statistic. Home underdogs with Craig Rolstad since 2016, 22, 40, and 2 against the spread. So it's like
home dogs.
We love home dogs. And Craig Rolstad's on the Colts hosting the Broncos this week, and the Colts are a 2-point, I think, home dog. So
that could change, but that could change. That could flip. That could flip. And I'm thinking there's a lot of Colts love coming in. That's great information. Yeah, it's fun to watch the info here that you tweet out, and I follow you on Twitter for sure, and that's fun to do, and it makes you think. I think that you can't bank on it completely, but I think you have to these days make it part of your handicap, in these situations. Another great question from Chris: do you track all the trends over recent years versus overall? Are you aware that they have changed the way they have called games over recent games or years versus lifetime tracking?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I said earlier. 2018 or 2016 is an ideal starting point because there have been rule changes over those years that obviously impact the way the games are officiated, and you're still able to have a sample size based on those rule changes. I look at 2-year trends and then 3-year trends, say 2021 to now. Another thing would be the COVID year, 2020. You can almost throw that year out because there was no home crowds, or for the most part, there were no crowds. And that was one of the rare years where road teams actually had a winning record. And scoring was up considerably versus every other year because there was no home crowd. And I
think the home crowd affects officiating a lot.
Oh, it does. I did a big article about this in the offseason. In fact, I have to send it to you later on.
Please.
What I did was I isolated 2020. Admittedly, it's a small sample size, but that's all we have with no crowds. And then because what I noticed with 2020 stats was a huge drop-off in offensive holding and pre-snap offensive penalties. Those were the 2 penalty categories that plummeted versus every other year on record. And when is the crowd the loudest? Right before the offensive pre-snap for the opponent. So what I did was use 2020 as the measuring stick and then compare every other team from 2018 to 2024 around that season and see what teams or what home crowds and stadiums have the most impact on opposing offenses. And there's some surprising results in there. I had the Steelers ranked as the number 1 home field penalty edge.
Oh,
and by
penalty quite a edge. It's funny. Home field penalty edge is different than a lot of stuff we assume. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful info, man. I would love to delve into that someday. I mean, there's so much we can talk about here. What's funny is that we have to get to some of these games. I know you love the NFL and you make some bets and you have a good time with it as well. And that's what we do. And that's what this show's about. So, and you can definitely mention some of the refs, but let's just kind of go over some of these games here, and we can pass if for the sake of timing and if in case we don't like something. Obviously, by the time this podcast comes out, the Packers versus the Commanders will be done. But I did notice that there was a ref in this game. That I was it Allen or Clark? It was Rogers or Clark, right?
Brad Rogers, yeah.
Yeah, right. I thought Rogers was a little bit more of an away ref. Was I wrong on that?
No, you're right. It's I think home teams have like a slightly below 500 ATS spread with him officiating. He's more of an over referee, although he has.
I saw your tweet today. Yeah, I saw your tweet on over.
It's a little bit misleading because his first two seasons were 2019, 2020, and he was on an absolute tear for the over. He was like 80% over for his first two seasons, in part because of 2020 and how distorted it was for the offenses. So he still has an over record for his career, but the last couple of years he has trended under. I think he was 9-7 under last season. But yeah, there's no favoritism for the home team with him.
So is this correlate with defensive PI calls? Because I know Torbert throws out a lot of those. I believe it was Torbert that threw out a lot, but maybe it was Sean Smith. I can't remember. But is being an over ref correlate with defensive PI calls and roughing the passer? Is that a big part of it?
It's part of it. I think honestly the most important thing is not calling offensive holding penalties. I think that is the most, because it's false start and offensive holding, the two combined, that represents the highest volume of penalties called over the course of a season. Last year was about 39% of all penalties called were either false start or offensive holding. So just the sheer volume of those penalties makes them the most important. And obviously, if you get a refereeing crew that calls a lot, like last year, Clay Martin led the league. They called almost 50% of their penalties false start and offensive holding. Well, what's that lead to? It leads to lower scoring games. And so that to me is the most important thing, but it does help obviously if you're throwing defensive pass interference penalties because it helps move the ball down the field.
Bills Jets, baby. Bills Jets. Jets are dogs by 6.5 points.
Yeah, that one. I mean, again, Buffalo emotional Sunday night win. Jets Sunday loss in a barn burner. I'd probably go with the Jets and the points. I mean, Blakeman's on that game. There's no real edge one way or the other from an officiating standpoint. Again, like I said earlier, week 1 to week 2, things change a lot, and you can tend to overreact. So it's just a game I want to sit back and watch and just see if the Jets can repeat what they did last week.
I agree, because my number is like 8.5, right? And it's like, so it's factored in already the spot and everything for the Bills, all the way down to 6.5. So I feel like I have to sit this one out, but it'd be fun to watch, see if the Jets are somewhat for real, see if Justin Fields can actually be consistent for one of the first times in his actual careers. And 8.75 is where I'm at. I'm staying away. Giants versus Cowboys. What's funny about this line is it kind of went up in the beginning of the week, and it kind of drifted back down. People betting on Russell Wilson and Tony Dayball. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. This is one of the plays that I took. I'm taking the Cowboys here. I took it at -4.5 on the open. There was probably some 3.5s out there. I think it dipped and then shot up, like I said. But, the truth is that I believe that whenever there's a quarterback like Jackson Dart sitting there, the crowd doesn't want to see Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's kind of new to the system, comes in, looks bad last week. It's a situation where I feel like he's shot, and he's kind of like the gatekeeper now for Dart. And I think this is going to expose him, because you have this Cowboys team that's really motivated now, knew that they could have won the last game, had 2 or 3 extra days of rest coming into this situation. CeeDee Lamb is not dropping a pass today. I really love the Javonte Williams addition to the Dallas Cowboys. I thought he did fantastic last week against a tough Eagles defense. You can say Jalen Carter was there or not. They still have a tough defense without one player. You always get a guy limping off from injury anyway. I just feel like Dallas with Ferguson And some of those big pickings and those receivers should be able to pick on the Giants' terrible secondary. And you can say what you want. The Giants' D-line looked great. They didn't look great to me. I don't know about Abdul Carter so much right now. I'm laying it with the Cowboys.
Yeah, and as much as anything, it's a bet. It's a bet against the Giants' offense because it's just anemic. They can't do anything, and so if they get down, 10-0, 14-3, they just can't. They can't move the ball. They could get the ball placed on the 3-yard line. The Cowboys 3. I'm not sure they can score.
I'm not sure they can score either. Cleveland Browns versus Baltimore Ravens. Ravens massive double-digit favorites at 11.5, total 45.5. Harbaugh helped that choke, and he does it all the time last week. The Ravens had the Bills in their sights, but at the same time, the Ravens, when coached properly, especially at the end of the game, are easily, I think, the best team in the league. It's hard to trust Harbaugh. Now you have a home field situation. The team should be pissed off, but last year I lost on the Ravens in Survivor against the Raiders after they beat the Chiefs, or after they got lost to the Chiefs by a toe, by Likely's toe. I'm going to tell you this. I'll be rooting for the Browns because I want those survivors out, and I will not be on the Ravens in Survivor, but I'm staying away from this one.
Yeah, I mean, they're like 11.5, 12-point favorites. I mean, Baltimore should win. Cleveland's defense is, I think it's for real. Can the offense chip in, 17 points and Cleveland loses 27-17, something like that? Brad Allen's on the game, good home field referee. But, yeah, there's no way after that game Sunday night you want to be laying 11.5 points with Baltimore. They may win, right, but there's always that room for that backdoor cover.
They always get backdoored. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Return of the Mac, my friends. Mac Jones is back in San Francisco. And I think that Joe might be a San Francisco 49ers fan. We'll let him elaborate on that. But the Niners are at the Saints. And then the Saints are home dogs at +3. I am shocked it got this low because I think that Mac Jones could be a good quarterback when he finally got a coach. And there's no better coach than Kyle Shanahan to fix a quarterback, in my opinion. Yet the Saints showed life on a prevent defense from the Cardinals last week. Their Cardinals were giving them everything underneath. I really want to bet the Niners. I haven't because they are just such a different team. Also without Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Ayuk's not there. It's like a completely new receiver core. And now you have a new quarterback that if Mac Jones throws picks, I'm staying away for now. But we have a low total of 40.5. What are your thoughts?
I've kind of put the Saints in the same category as the aforementioned Giants. I'm just not sure how much they can score, it looks favorable for them being at home against a beat-up 49ers team, but do they have the talent to take advantage of it? Mac Jones, I mean, he had a great year, his rookie year. I think the whole thing in the situation with Belichick in New England, it was just a toxic – he wasn't coached properly. I think he'll be fine. I think he can do everything Brock Purdy does. I'm with you. I like San Francisco. I just don't trust the Saints. I just don't think they have the talent, especially a quarterback, to take advantage.
I don't think so either. I don't think Rattler's really – I think he's a second-string NFL quarterback maybe. He wasn't much in college. He was supposed to be, but he wasn't, but he still made it. I like Olave a little bit, but this Saints offensive line is bad, and their defense is choppable. I have the Saints as still the worst team in the league until I see differently. I just thought the Cardinals, Kyler Murray that game up by 10, and he takes a 20-yard sack on third down. There just does Kyler Murray things, which drives people nuts, especially Cardinals fans. But it's a situation where I'm probably staying pretty far away from it myself. Let's move on to the next game. And I will say that, the Niners, actually, I was even thinking Survivor for a while, just keep fading the Saints for a while, but I've got a different idea now for Survivor. Rams, Titans +5.5 home dog, total 41.5. You already mentioned a referee in this game. Yeah,
well, Titans getting an ideal assignment with John Hussey on the game.
Very ideal.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a coaching mismatch. I'm not sold on Brian Callahan whatsoever. The Titans were a really sloppy team last year in his first season, and they were sloppy again last Sunday. So from what I can tell, nothing's changed, whereas McVay, his teams are always buttoned up. They're ready to go. It's just to stay. Again, I just want to watch the game and just see what changes from week 1 to week 2, and just we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm scared as hell of betting the Rams after they should have lost that game if that ball wasn't punched out of Dare Ogunbowale's hands last week. And I'm pissed because I was on the Titans. I thought I deserved that one for the contest, but it is what it is. I got NFL'd, and the guy that just made the catch to get down there fumbled. So
right,
that is what it is. Let's move on to the next game. The Jaguars versus the Bengals. I have a play on this, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so Cincinnati and Jacksonville. Well, Alan X on the game, so he's a very good home field referee, so that favors the Bengals. I actually think it could be a higher scoring game. Jacksonville's offense looked pretty solid. Like Liam Cohen he looked so far after 1 week. It's a small sample size, but their offense looked a lot more efficient last week. Now it's against Carolina, so take that for what it's worth. The Bengals, that was a divisional road game last week against the Browns defense. I think is pretty good. It's going to be a lot easier going. I think the over is the play in this game.
The Bengals had 7 total yards in the second half and won the game.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah. And should have lost. I should have lost the game, actually. But
if they lost, I would not be playing the Jaguars. The fact that they won and got through that crap makes me still want to play the Jaguars a little bit. I think there's a situation here where it's going to be back and forth all game. And that's why I kind of like the over a little bit too. It's a high total at 48.5. Right. Not seeing any weather. I just think that I like Liam Cohen, and I had the Jaguars last week. I didn't have them in contest, but they handled the Panthers like they're supposed to do. But I just feel like the talent on this Jaguars team is very backdoorable, and this Bengals defense is so bad that I just feel like they can't stop anybody, and it's always going to be a shootout with them unless they're playing a team like the Saints or the Patriots or Carolina, right? Or a slower team that pounds the ball. I just feel like the Jaguars can cover 3.5, and it sucks that X there. Maybe X going to be like he was against the Bears. I don't know. Or maybe that changes. But I'm okay with the Bengals winning by 3 because I got 3.5. So that's another play from my side. Yeah. Bears Lions. Lions up to -6 in some books. It's like -5 in a lot of contests. Lions looked pretty bad last week, but it's also another thing. It's like if you bet on the team that looked bad the week before and always faded bet against the team that looked bad and bet on the team that looked good, you're probably losing a lot of money in the NFL, aren't you?
Right. Yeah, this is a fascinating game. Detroit they looked dead last week, just nothing. The Bears, they look good early, but they're the Bears. You got Ben Johnson against his old team. There's a lot of storylines to this one. Detroit's home field. It's going to be loud in there. A lot of pre-snap penalties for the Bears on Monday night at home. Okay, so now they're going to be in that environment, in that dome in Detroit. So if I had to, I'd take Detroit laying the points, but not with a lot of confidence. Again, it's a game I just want to see. Let's see what we get from week 1 to week 2 with these teams, okay? Because week 1 can be misleading.
And it can be, but all the concerns we had so far, after one game, this Lions offensive line has to be better. And what they showed against Green Bay was terrible. And the coordinators, you heard a lot of great things from the beat writers, but still haven't seen it. But if Campbell can't get these guys to beat his offensive coordinator that everybody's been giving credit to for their runs, then Campbell is not a good coach. Campbell has to win this by margin, in my opinion. This team has to play their asses are on fire, to blow out this Bears team and their old offensive coordinator. If they are not motivated to do that, then there's something wrong. But here's the problem. I kind of always thought Dan Campbell had some stuff wrong. I think he's a great leader. He's like Ed Orgeron was in the LSU team where he had, Joe Brady as his coordinator doing RPOs. It just feels like we're going to find out a lot about Dan Campbell this game, but I didn't lay it. I could have got 4.5 and I didn't. I missed it. So I leaned the line.
It's one of the more compelling games of the weekend just because of all the storylines around it and what we saw last week. Is that the true team or is that just a blip on the screen?
We'll find out. Seattle versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh -3, total 39.5. Scott Novak.
Scott Novak on it. Yeah, I mentioned that. He's terrible home field referee, but the Steelers are undefeated with him at home, 3-0 straight up and against the spread. So they've managed to keep him. Managed to keep him at bay. I like the Steelers in this one. I think they can carry the momentum from last week into this game here. I bet against Seattle last week with the Niners. And to be perfectly honest, San Francisco should have won that game by 8-10 points
minimum. And that's one bad beat. I didn't bet him. I took Seattle in the contest. That's when I agreed I should have lost even by more.
Right.
Even though Darnold fumbled, they shouldn't have been in that game.
No, I agree. It was a total look. San Francisco dominated the game. I don't trust Sam Darnold. I think last year was an outlier in his 7-year career. That was the 1 year with Kevin O'Connell, everybody looks good. So the reality is he's a backup quarterback for a reason, or he had been. Seattle offensive line's not good. Pittsburgh's going to get after it this week. They were embarrassed defensively last week. Rodgers gives them a little bit more leeway defensively. They can get into that 24, 27-point range. I like the Steelers here on Sunday. And it's a home opener, but it's their only home game for the first 6 weeks of the season. They're not back in Pittsburgh again until week 6 against Cleveland.
Yeah, they better get up for it, but it's just such a weird letdown spot after Rodgers beats his old team and the way he celebrated. And it's so hard. My number is 2.75, so I'm really close to it anyway. But
it's
the way I looked at it is I bet on Sam Darnold last week. You get what you deserve when you bet on Sam Darnold. And if you lose, that's because you bet on Sam Darnold. And it's just a situation where the worst thing you can do is fumble. So what do? You don't see Nick Bosa pushing the guy towards you. You carelessly just whip your arm back. It's just so Sam Darnold, he chokes. I can't bet on. It's going to be hard for me to bet on Seattle this year, and there's going to be a spot where I have to, and I'm not going to like it, man. I'm not. This is not the spot. I'm just leaving this one alone. Patriots versus Dolphins. Now Dolphins. Oh, money coming. -1.5, maybe -118. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was really considering the Dolphins for the contest play, and I still might. But here's the thing. This team looks so bad, and they are way better than this, and that the Patriots. I just feel like even though they hate their coach, Mike McDaniel, this is the game that they're going to kick ass in, and then they'll lose again next week. It just feels so NFL-y that people are going to be like, oh, duh, the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill exploded for 100. I think I'll take a Tyreek Hill prop. I didn't take it yet, but it's hard to bet the Dolphins because maybe the coach did lose them so much that they're not going to care how they look, but it's the Dolphins are nothing for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Miami just looked atrocious last week. You have to figure that if they have any sort of pride, there'll be a bounce back. And they do have a very good home field advantage. If you look at their home versus road splits for the last 6-7 years, they're one of the better home teams. That South Florida heat and humidity, and the opposing team sits on the northern sideline in that sun the whole game. And so that definitely has an effect on opposing teams. And Miami has a pretty good winning percentage because of that.
They sure do. It's hot and muggy, and it's just – I wish the Patriots almost won. It'd been a better spot. But when everybody hates you, it's time to bet on, man. Panthers versus Cardinals. Cardinals -6.5, total 44.5. Joe, I'm going to this game with my son. I'm bringing him there, and I'm not betting on it. I don't need to.
I'd probably. This is another game you can probably play the over. Arizona at home. The Panthers. Who knows what you're getting? Arizona should get there 27, 31 points.
Well, what's going to stop Jonathan Gannon playing prevent the whole time? That's what he did. That's what he did. He let everything underneath. And that's going to get the Panthers down the field. The Panthers down 9. They get down to the 30. They kick the field goal. They're down 6. Game's over. I mean, it's just I feel like laying big points with the Cardinals is going to be very dangerous. Even though my number is like 7.5, 8. I just can't get there, man. It's because of the way they play defense. And, I don't think there's a ref side on this game. I'm going to enjoy it watching it. And I couldn't play the Cardinals for Survivor just because I can't be at the game where I lose a big Survivor. Maybe a smaller Survivor. I'm in a few small ones too. But, yeah, it's a situation where I'm staying away. Broncos Colts. Colts looked
that's
great last week.
That's a fascinating game because, again, how good are the Colts considering what we just mentioned about Miami? They basically laid down last week, didn't do anything. So it's very hard to get a gauge on. And I took the Colts last week. That was one of my plays, was the Colts.
Good play.
But again, you're playing a Miami team that just didn't show up. So that's not going to be the case this week. Peyton will have Denver ready. It's a completely different opposition this week. And again, it's a game I want to watch and see. Look, if the Colts end up going 2-0, well, hey, maybe you got to take him for real. I think Steichen's a good coach as well. So they can never get the quarterback right. Daniel Jones, I don't think he's not terrible. He won a playoff game on the road. So we'll see. It's just a fascinating game. Denver looked sloppy last week. The Colts look great. Yeah, we shall see what happens.
We shall see, and I agree with a we shall see. From your standpoint, I actually do have a play on this, but it is a larger play, and I'm reserving that for the members. Philly versus Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs plus 1.5. Total 46.5. Rematch of the Super Bowl, but Mahomes with the home dog record. Was he like 15-4 the last?
Yeah, something like that. I heard 11-4 yesterday. I don't know what it is. But it's
high.
Pretty damn good, whatever it is.
I think it is 11. Yeah.
The Chiefs lost 2 games, and now to be fair, those 2 games are 7 months apart. But they were against the Eagles, and then the Chargers last week. But their offensive line has been absolutely exposed in both of those games.
Terrible.
And so Philly has a huge advantage in the trenches, particularly along the offensive line. And they get Jalen Carter back this week, which completely changes the dynamic of that defensive line. I just think Philly's a better team. They have better players, especially in the trenches. Yeah, Mahomes is a magician. I like Philadelphia in this one. I wrote up about this game this week. The offensive holding, the false start penalties for Kansas City have been an issue. Alex Kemp, he ranks second for offensive holding penalties per game last year, and he currently co-ranks number 1 for us offensive holding this year. So if that continues on Sunday and the Chiefs get 3 or 4 offensive holding penalties and the Eagles usually don't, well, over the course of the game, that means a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, I wonder how good of a ref Kemp is. Do you have like numbers on like how good they are, accurate, you think, and not like from a standard deviation type situation, bell curve?
No, I mean on how good they are. That's a judgment call, I suppose. I think Bill Vinovich is the best referee because he tends to let them play. Just looks, especially in those big games, generally stays out of the way. Any referee that stays out of the way, to me, is a better referee. Now, some will say, well, they're not calling penalties. They should. But I say you let the players play and the chips fall where they may. So, to me, like a guy like Bill Vinovich is the gold standard. Kemp can get a little bit too involved in games, and he did that Broncos game last week, as we mentioned. And there was a whole lot of calls in that were very controversial. And in fact, the last time the Chiefs had Alex Kemp on their game was week 2 last season. So he's back there again week 2 this season. It was the Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. That was like that 4th and 20. And they threw a defensive pass interference at the very end, like 45 seconds left, that sort of helped the Chiefs kick a field goal and win the game.
It sure did. It actually fixed the game for the Chiefs. I remember it quite well.
That was the last time Alex Kemp did a Chiefs game.
Yeah, I remember that quite well, and thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I mean, I am not betting this game. There's not with Kemp there, man. He is just like you said, all over the place, and likes to affect games. Yeah, I agree with the letting him play to a certain extent, like that. A very tiny jersey tug that on a ball that is completely uncatchable. It's the end of the game. Dude, like, I mean, didn't you see the offensive guy just push him off? It's like you could have called back. It's like don't get involved when it's like that. I agree that the game people need to learn from Vinovich if that's the case. We got the Bucks. Or no, wait. I'm getting ahead. Falcons versus Vikings, and Vikings is 3.5. The total is 44.5.
Again, this is a fascinating game. I'm a huge Michael Penix fan, but the Vikings, that roster is absolutely stacked. McCarthy looked like the real deal, at least in the fourth quarter on Monday night. They're going to be at home, one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. That place is going to be rocking. I think Atlanta could be 0-2 after that game.
They'll probably be 0-2, but I will cover the game hopefully because this is my third play. We're going with the Falcons plus the 3.5. I gave it out at 4.5, so it's 3.5. I still like it, and I'm going to have to write down 3.5 for a podcast play. Here's the thing. The great storyline is clearly the Michigan versus Washington national championship rematch, and that's an awesome storyline. Bravo to the NFL. This is a game where I like Penix. I hate the coach. I think Raheem Morris might be the worst freaking coach in the NFL, and I think Kevin O'Connell might be the greatest coach in the NFL, or up there, right? But I'm not selling McCarthy yet. I mean, and so I almost even like Penix as an NFL quarterback more than McCarthy right now. At least Penix had more games under his show. I think Minnesota wins by 3. I think it's gonna be a field. I think they might be trailing, but the Falcons completely outgained Tampa. They should have won that game, and Young Hoku completely messed that up. The field goal kicker, and hopefully it's not up to him this week, and maybe they go for it a little bit more. But it's a home run spot for the Falcons that need this game, and I think they cover. So we'll go with the Falcons plus 3.5 for our third play. Bucks Texans -2.5, total 42.5. This is the interesting game that was brought up by Chris that we wonder about Sean Hockley, the official here, who might have some trends to the under. Bucks versus Texans -2.5, total 42.5.
Yeah, I mean, Hockley is a great under referee. I don't know if I have it in front of me here, but he's like 65 and 43 to the under, something like that in his career. It's about 58, 59% to the under in his career. And he was 11-6 to the under last season. He's 1-0 to the under this season. He did the 49ers and Seahawks last week. You got two defensive-minded head coaches, Bowles versus D'Amico Ryans. Both offensive lines are shaky, particularly the Texans. It was a real problem for them last week. And you get a referee like Hockley who makes a point of emphasis on these offensive penalties. Well, that could spell a long night for the Texans. So, to me, it would be under or nothing. That seems the most logical bet in the game. And as far as the side goes, I would lean to the Bucks plus 2.5 because they do have a little bit more offensive continuity, which will go a long way with this officiating crew. But look, they struggled a little bit last week against a subpar Falcons defense, and this Texans defense is the real deal. So the under looks the way to go to me. But from a side point, I'd probably just lean Tampa.
I think the fact it's 42.5 tells me to the under too. I mean, it's not like toying with 43, 44. This tells me under, really. I think there's a chance that this could be a 6-3 game at halftime, and it's going to be very ugly. And there's injuries on both sides, and receiver injuries on Tampa. There's always seems to be injuries on the Texans. Mixon's been out, obviously, and the Texans
the problem for the Texans, and they had this issue last year, was the offensive line is a disaster. They struggled for the first 8 games last year, and obviously, like I just mentioned, they struggled on Sunday, admittedly against a very good Rams defense on the road. So, but the offensive line's completely revamped, and so that takes time to figure everything out. And so, Tampa does have a pretty good defensive line. So, the under is the play here, absolutely.
And Chris brings up a good point. Is there a dome record? Do you take dome records on these over unders with the refs? Like if you're in a dome,
there are statistics like in a dome or outdoors or non-conference, stuff like that. It doesn't really affect anything too much.
And I think taking a dome record from October 31st on is a lot different than from August to September to October. I think that it should be closer. And domes are always better, but I mean, it's like it could throw your stats off if you're like, oh, these are always domes. It's like, well, this is early in the year, so
right.
It's a great point for Chris to bring up for sure. Though I'm interested, especially after October 31st, about domes.
I'll look it up later on, but domes are also louder in theory, at least. Like you go to that U.S. Bank Stadium, and that place is loud. So
I guess blowouts, they're quiet, and that's maybe when it really goes over. Yeah. So live betting, blowout happening, maybe lean to the over in a dome, because it's quieter. I don't know, just thinking out of the box. and that's what we need to do. Okay, good. All right, good stuff. And my number's -1, so I do lean Tampa, but I'm just not there. You got a team that won against a team that lost, and it's just there's some good trends for that. Well, now we got the oh wow, that was a Monday night game too. The first one I forgot.
Yeah,
There's two Monday night games. Two Monday night games, and then finally the Chargers versus the Raiders. The Raiders +3, total 46.5. I looked at this number and I said the Raiders are probably the play, but I'm so high in the Chargers compared to the marketplace. I just can't give the Raiders a big home field advantage in Vegas, where that the people from San Diego would rather go to Vegas to watch their team than they would LA. They freaking hate LA. I just talked to someone today that's a Chargers fan. He's like, he can't stand LA, but he would watch his team anywhere else. The problem with the Chargers is that, or the problem with the Raiders is that it's a transient field as it is. Raiders fans sell their tickets to their home tickets to away people coming in and visiting and partying in Vegas.
Right.
I almost feel like this could be a 50-50 home crowd, and so if that's the case, it makes you look a little bit more towards the Chargers. I still think the Raiders were probably the side at 3.5, but I didn't play it.
Yeah, the Raiders seem like the side, although Clay Martin's on this game. So divisional home teams in his career, 14-27 against the spread. So it's like 34%, 35%, something like that. So that favors the Chargers. And he calls a lot of offensive holding penalties, Clay Martin's crew does. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for a total. But again, it's just another game. The Raiders looked pretty solid last week. Chargers obviously look great. What are we going to get week 2? Because things change dramatically from week to week. So the snapshot of week 1 is not necessarily what we're going to see on Monday night. So another game I just want to sit back, watch. Yeah, I'd take the Raiders plus the 3.5 if I had to, but no real opinion.
Absolutely. Well, if there's a plus money play of any of these, whether it be a money line and a dog you like, or any type of prop bet or anything, this is our beer bet banger section. It's just like for beer money, you put a little money on some plus money here. Is there anything that you can think of, or you want me to try to go first?
Well, it's a to be determined thing. Here's what I like to do is teams that you have a high opinion of for whatever reason that may start the season 0-2, and there are a couple in that category, like the Kansas City Chiefs. If the Chiefs start 0-2, all of a sudden you can start to get some pretty good odds on them, betting them to win the division, the AFC West, or win the Super Bowl, whatever it may be. So I like to look at things like that after this week 2 on teams that you do like, and for whatever reason, they just haven't won a game. All of a sudden, they've gone from 6-1 to 18-1, things like that, just because of their records. So you start doing that after a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks into the season. And so, the Falcons, the Chiefs, they could all be 0-2. I'm trying to think who else. There's another high-profile team that could be in that. So that's what I would suggest.
Well, there you go. You can just pick and.
It just stopped.
There you are, Joe. But yeah, I had a little internet hiccup here. Beer bet banger. I'm going to do a little beer money on this Chargers game, and I think that I'm just going to go with Michael Mayer to score the first touchdown. Okay, he's the backup tight end. Well, he's tight end 2. Let's say he's in some place with Brock Bowers, but Brock Bowers is banged up, and if Brock Bowers is actually out this game, that makes that number a lot more valuable. But I also think that Mayer still could make the first touchdown anyway, because he does play, and he played last week with Bowers. So beer bet banger, 13-1 Michael Mayer to score the first touchdown on a Monday night.
It'll be an early Halloween present if he hits.
Well, it'd be like I'll put a 12-pack on it.
I was going to mix up with Michael Meyer and Michael Mayer. Like, that's
I'll be able to drink. I'll be right. Michael Meyer. I'll be able to drink beer till Halloween, and Michael Meyer might pay me a visit with trick or treat or something. Yeah, man. This is a lot of fun, Joe. I think you have amazing information and an amazing way to look at the NFL that's not talked about enough. You hear people break down sides and break down totals, but they never really talk about what's a big influence in the game. And so I want to thank you for that. And I would like you to let your listeners and viewers know where they can kind of follow you and find your great information.
Yeah, I post everything each week on Twitter as the games come out. So at NFL Ref Stats 1 on Twitter. And like you said earlier, I work for Warren Sharp over at Sharp Football and sharpfootballanalysis.com. And I post an article there each week detailing a few games in depth. But primarily Twitter, NFL Ref Stats 1. That's where you go.
There you go. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He says some great takes and some great information for you every single NFL game and every single week. Thanks a lot, Joe. Hey, best of luck this weekend on all your plays.
Great. Thanks, Keith. All right.